We'll make a start. So hi, everyone. Thank you very much for attending our webinar today on Intro to Artificial Intelligence. So the agenda, what we'll be covering today, I'll just do some introductions to myself. We'll then do a rise of AI and business applications. I'll go through some real AI use cases and case studies of projects that we're actually working on now. We'll talk a little bit about AI risks and mitigation strategies, and then we'll talk about Valto's AI offerings and next steps. If anybody has any questions, just drop them into the Q&A and I'll pick those up at the end. So as a quick introduction to myself, I'm Hugh Valentine. I'm the CEO and founder here at Valto. As you can see from there, I've got a nearly 2-year-old. I enjoy hiking, so Valto do a lot of hikes and runs. So I'm doing a half marathon on Sunday, and Valto is doing the Welsh 3000s coming up in May to raise money for one of our charities, which is We Mind the Gap. And I'm a big Liverpool fan. I used AI to generate a picture of what the attendees might look like of joining this. So I use ChatGPT and Copilot a lot for generating creative images. It's a real benefit for when we're doing presentations and stuff like that. So that's how I'm using some of the AI technology as it stands today. A quick introduction to Valto. So we specialize in Microsoft technology. So we provide consultancy, managed services, and development. And we split the business into 5 areas. So the first area is modern workplace. So that's developing intranet solutions, document management, and hybrid ways of working. And primarily we use tools like Teams, SharePoint, Viva, and a few other Microsoft services to do that. We have a managed services arm, which can provide managed IT support for the pillars that are on the screen now. We provide Microsoft 365 and Azure services. So that's organizing desktops, mobiles, and migrating traditional workloads to Azure. We have a very large business applications team. So we focus there on Power Apps, Power BI, and Power Automate. And then finally, our newest team is our data and AI practice. So here we do a lot of solutions around Fabric, Power BI, Copilot, of course, and then some Azure Pro Code development. I'm going to cover off the rise of AI and business applications. So I'm going to start off just by giving a quick introduction to the types of AI technologies that we can leverage today. So the first one we have is something called supervised learning. So supervised learning is where we can train a model using machine learning on basically technology where it can identify and start to learn based on information that we provide it. So as an example here, we could provide AI technology 1,000 labeled videos of foxes. So we could go through those, and then we can ask it to identify future footage of foxes that I can identify. So this is an example where a zoo could use that, or perhaps a wildlife, to start to automatically classify wildlife cameras that they have out in the wild. The second type we have is unsupervised learning. So we're doing a lot here with a tool called Microsoft Fabric. So if your organization could afford to have a data scientist, that data scientist would be looking at all of your data sources in an organization and looking for patterns and correlations and then presenting those back to your organization. A fantastic use case for AI, and a specialist feature of Fabric is that it can provide that data scientist tool for you without having a person doing it. So what we would do is we can connect it to all the different data sources that you have in your organization, and then it can start to come back with clusters of data that it identifies. So as an example of this, you could put in ticket purchases, and it could identify patterns of who's buying those tickets. So it might be age groups of people that are buying certain tickets. Or as you can see here, it can identify across shopping habits of what people are buying and combinations of goods that people are buying, so that can then be used to target specific marketing. The final one is reinforcement learning. So this will be used a lot in the education space. A kind of area that you would have seen this in use is Instagram. So Instagram Reels are rewarded by the ones that you like and watch. So any of those will start to present back more of those Reels for you. So it's learning over time based on how you're training that AI. couple of other technologies that we're using, computer vision. So this, you can see in the top right-hand corner, is able to take footage of videos, and it can identify that in real time, what it's identifying. So it's classifying traffic lights, persons, cars, and dogs in this. And then the next one is natural language processing. So the natural language processing can take this handwriting, which is very difficult to read on the left-hand side, and then it can automatically translate that into OCR and then start to make it more readable and obviously searchable. And then that can be leveraged in other AI technologies. Microsoft have provided a lot of AI updates themselves. So another technology that we're leveraging a lot is a product called Copilot Studio. So Copilot Studio basically is another low-code tool provided by Microsoft that allows us to start to build our own copilots. So a brilliant use case for this is that you might want to get all of the functionality and features that Copilot provides, but you're using a custom ERP system. So you might be using Salesforce or SAP or NetSuite, which obviously aren't Microsoft products. So what Copilot Studio would let us do is automatically connect to those systems and start to develop Copilot functionality for those as well. So you could connect it to Xero, and then you could start to ask questions of your Xero database, like how many invoices have we sent, or what's our #1 paying customer. As part of Copilot Studio, we also now have Copilot agents. So Copilot agents allow us to start to build custom agents that are basically autonomous, that can go complete tasks and workflows for us automatically. So this can connect to APIs, and it can start to then go do tasks for us automatically, like maybe send invoices through Xero. It can respond to responses from users that are asking questions. So it's a very powerful workflow tool that lets us automate more processes and tasks. We'll be covering off a Copilot Agents webinar in the near future as well. And then we have Copilot Web Pages or Copilot Pages. So Copilot Pages basically allow us to create low-code web pages, so we don't need to have any coding, and they allow us to start to embed Copilot functionality into web pages where users can interact with them. So as an example of this, they could be used for integrating with a shop where it can start to come back with product recommendations for people. Again, we'll be covering off Copilot Pages in the near future in a dedicated webinar. Some of the real AI use cases that we're working on now with organizations. So a civil engineering project here. This is an example of AI detecting cracks and faults from recorded videos. And it's basically on the right-hand side, you can see the video will start to show indications of when it identifies a fault. What this does is we can train the model over time so that instead of an engineering having to play back this footage, it can be done automatically and raise faults to an engineer. So it can save a huge amount of time for that engineer. And you can see it just flagged 100% fault. So the idea of this is taking away the man hours of that task and start to present the engineer with areas where we think it's found faults. We also have a recruitment example here, which is where we can leverage a product called SharePoint Premium. So SharePoint Premium integrates with SharePoint. And what it allows us to do is extract information from things like Word documents or PDFs. So in this example on the right-hand side, we're taking CVs for an organization, and then we're automatically extracting the metadata for those CVs and then uploading it into the SharePoint library. So we don't have to then manually type in first name, last name, skills. It's doing that automatically. This is actually being extended for a recruitment organization where the recruitment organization is converting those CVs into a different format, their own company format, rather than the personal individual CVs. So it can save a huge amount of time by translating those CVs into templates automatically, rather than it having to be a manual job as it is now. Non-profits are leveraging things like Fabric a lot. So on the right-hand side, you can see there's a report which is showing some information. The text you can see on the far right-hand side is automatically summarizing common trends. So it's saying when the common month for donations is. So it means that if you don't perhaps understand what you're being presented with, Fabric's automatically coming back with what you're seeing and what you're able to deduce from that. We're also working with non-profits on trends for when people are likely to donate, so that we can use this to automatically target when an email goes out. So for example, it might look at individuals in their CRM. It might identify that I'm likely to donate every 4 months. So if we were to send a targeted email to that individual at 3 months with a reminder for them, it's going to increase my chances of donating and in case I forget or decide to donate elsewhere. We've got here a tender scoring Copilot. So we use this internally a lot. This is basically using Copilot to help us score our own tender responses and also use it to identify whether we should proceed with a tender. So on the left-hand side, we've defined a very clear scope of what we want Copilot to do. So we've kind of given it the experience that we need, a carbon expert evaluator with 2 decades of meticulous study. We've also given it the task of what we would like it to do, which is review the RFP submissions. And then over on the right-hand side, it's coming back with a score. So as I said, we use this internally when we're responding to tenders, and it's an extra pair of eyes on those tender responses. I'm an IT director. I'm reviewing this based on the scoring criteria. And even if it only improves our tender response by 5%, that can make a huge difference in the amount of tenders that we win or lose. There's also lots of cases now where we're using Copilot to save time. We've done some dedicated webinars on this, and there's videos available on our website. But we use it for creating PowerPoint presentations automatically. I mentioned that I use it a lot to create creative images to include in documents. We've defined a lot of personas to have extra pairs of eyes on documents that we're reviewing. And then consultants are using it to help automatically create their workshop reports now from notes. We're working on a new tender scoring process, which is using Azure OpenAI. This process basically will analyze drawings. So we're looking at tender documents that have been provided. We have a client that then scores those tender documents based on have we worked with them before? Is this an area that we have strengths in? Do we have case studies and some other criteria? So there's 10 questions that help score that tender. And what we're doing is we're now scoring tenders automatically using Azure OpenAI, and we're training that model. And then in parallel, we're also having the current person who does those scorings score them as well. And what we're trying to do is get the AI and the person who's scoring them to be in parity. And that means then instead of the person doing it who spends a considerable amount of time scoring them, he can then let AI score the majority of them. And then if it starts to score the ones above 80%, he can then go do some further work on those. And again, that'll save a huge amount of time, because usually the bottleneck in construction, for example, is how many tenders can be scored and how many tenders can be responded to. So if we can automate as much of that as possible, then that organization can bring more revenue in. We're also using Fabric to help generate leads. So we can use external data sources like public construction sites or LinkedIn. And what it can do is generate report of potential leads like upcoming tenders. So for example, if there's been a new hotel development in a certain region, it'll pick that up. And what it'll do then is automatically create leads in Dynamics 365, which can then go through a process of trying to get the tender information and move forward with that. Another example here is leveraging Copilot Studio to create case summaries. So in the legal sector, solicitors are required to submit a number of cases. It's like a review system. The more of those cases that they submit and the higher ranking of those, then the more chance they've got of being ranked the #1 solicitor in the UK. But that process takes a very long time. So each solicitor has to create those case summaries based on looking at their information in their case management system. They have to create a Word document. It has to be completed in a certain template, and then that gets submitted. So it's a huge time sink. And for the legal sector, the people that are doing it are usually billable resources, so they're losing money as well. So what this will do is Copilot Studio would gather all the required information from the third-party case management system. it'll strip out the personal information, and then it'll create the summary Word document in the required template, and it'll complete 80% of that task to hand it over to the solicitor for review or approval. Dynamics 365 has some fantastic tools that we can leverage in here. So this one's one called predictive work duration. So if your organization does a lot of fixed price work, like maintenance, or like we do a lot of workshops and projects, what this will do is it'll analyze historical booking information. So based on previous projects, how long do those workshops or inspections take to complete? And it's looking at the resource, so who's doing them. It's looking at the customer that you work with. Some customers may take more time or be more complicated. And then it's looking at the type of work that we're doing. And what it does then is it comes back with realistic recommendations on how long that work should be to schedule in. Over on the right-hand side, you can see that some customers increase the duration or decrease it, but also the type of person that's doing it and the type of project that we're completing. So we're leveraging this a lot to identify where we've overestimated bookings or underestimated bookings, and then we can kind of optimize our scheduling processes around that. Another use case for Copilot agents is taking data from a knowledge base like Dynamics 365 or SharePoint. We can then create an agent which is available on a public website or extranet, and that can provide responses to questions without escalation to a human. So that can save huge amounts of time, perhaps on a public website where you get a lot of inquiries, like IT support requests or customer service inquiries. This can start to drive those numbers down and get some self-service responses going before that's escalated to a human. Another project that we're working on at the moment is around knowledge management. So what we find in organizations is that there's an aging workforce. We might have a manufacturing organization, and the workforce has a lot of knowledge. And when they attend a meeting, it might be that they are aware of products or projects that are highly profitable, or they have combinations of projects that have worked really well in the past. And during the meeting, that knowledge is able to be kind of distributed and shared, and that happens a lot in those meetings. However, when that worker leaves the organization, then we then lose a lot of that expertise. So what we're looking to do is create a agent that lives within meetings, and it'll provide real-time meeting support. So first of all, it's gathering the knowledge. It can look at ERP systems. It can gather knowledge from existing meetings that have happened, from documentation. And it's basically trying to be that expert worker. And then during the meeting, it can start to provide real-time meeting suggestions. So during a meeting, we might say, does this project combination work, or do these products work? This could go into the ERP system, and it could automatically come back and say, we did a project of this in 2017. It was highly profitable. These are the SKUs that we leveraged, and this is the project that went forward. Or it could come back and say that it was a failure and that it wasn't profitable. But the idea is that we're building that knowledge base for that organization, and it's starting to bridge the knowledge gaps. And then as organizations lose employees, we're still keeping that organizational expertise. There's a few things around AI technologies which we need to address. So there's a lot of risk with just kind of going forward with a product like Copilot or starting an AI project. So the first one is data security. We're seeing a lot of people who've gone live with Copilot, and it's starting to identify issues in their SharePoint environment. So because Copilot makes it very easy to ask a question, employees start to ask it questions like, what is the bonus structure, or how much does X person get paid? If that information is stored in a SharePoint site that inadvertently is accessible by everybody, historically that wouldn't have been easy to find because users would have had to go digging. However, Copilot will have access to that and could potentially then start to give answers back to shared documents that shouldn't be. So data security is really important. We can use things like sensitivity labels and retention to make sure that data is being removed and data is secure to prevent that from happening. The other issues that we see is around disinformation and bias. So people that are using Copilot or ChatGPT, and they're using it to help leverage their kind of day-to-day tasks, it can have some built-in bias and different disinformation in there. So we have to be careful with what information is being presented back. But there's been cases where fake legal cases have been created by the Copilot or ChatGPT. So we just have to make sure that we're checking what's coming through. Not maximizing the return on investment. So again, I'm going to pick on Copilot for this one. A lot of people in organizations are apprehensive about rolling out Copilot because it's a very expensive cost to a business. And what we're seeing is that a lot of those licenses are getting activated, but then perhaps not being used properly. But it's really important that if you plan to roll something out like Copilot, then we're measuring that return on investment. We're making sure that people are using it and then rolling that out effectively across the business. A couple of things on copyright. So there is a lot of intellectual issues with copyright. So you can see here on this slide that there's an AI art generator tool that's been leveraging Getty Images to train its model. And you can see that the Getty Images logo started to appear in a lot of their images. So you've got to be careful when you start to use this for stuff that you might want to resell, that you're not actually using other people's copyrighted materials without approval. To mitigate those risks, we're recommending to organizations that they start to, if they're leveraging AI tools, you can see that this is a list of recommendations. So we recommend that people remove or replace human created work. So if you use AI to create something, spend time after that to make it your own. Don't just copy and paste it and then leverage that. You should also document the process where you've leveraged AI so you can show that there's human authorship. We're also making sure that companies start to put policies in place around when AI should be used. That includes updating service agreements and employment contracts, and then making sure that it's clear what tools that people can use in an organization. So don't let people just go off and use the free ChatGPT as an example of that. If you leverage tools that Microsoft have provided, like Copilot or any of the other Azure AI services that they have, Microsoft are underwriting the risk of copyright on there. So you're actually safe and secure from leveraging those tools, whereas you perhaps wouldn't be if you used any of the other ones. As a kind of roadmap we recommend for organizations, I recommend that you look at setting AI objectives. So what tools do you plan to roll out? What return on investment would you get? Identify what AI opportunities there are. Set some measurable AI targets like return on investment and what projects could be replaced or where you could streamline your efficiencies. Obviously, develop a roadmap for adoption, create your governance guidelines. And the last piece is quite important because you're going to struggle to get your own AI talent. It's going to be very expensive now to recruit someone who's got AI knowledge. So you need to start to train your workforce on utilizing AI tools and working in a smarter way. Just a final few bits on some of Valto's AI offerings. So we have a number of different solutions. So obviously we're reselling Microsoft AI products like Fabric and Copilot. We're providing AI consultative services around AI readiness, and we're doing pro code development. So if you have a very custom project where you're looking to integrate AI, we have the resources in-house to be able to develop that. Our AI readiness workshop's good if you're looking to start a project with AI and you're looking to understand what you could do in your industry and what other organizations are doing. So we show an art of the possible, why you should be excited for it, how you can roll out that from a training perspective, security, what licenses that you might need, and we identify some proof of concept projects during that session that could then be rolled out across your organization. We also have our AI app development, which basically is building a custom AI tool for your organization. So this is the starting point if you're looking to build a AI process where we'll come into your organization, we'll look at the objectives, we'll look at the current processes, and we'll develop you a proposal for building that AI in your organization. We also have a Microsoft 365 Copilot Accelerator. So if you're looking to roll out 365 Copilot, then we've got 3 key areas. We have a Copilot security assessment, which is reviewing your whole 365 environment and making sure that it's all set up using tools like Intune, EMS, SharePoint, and like I said before, retention and sensitivity labels. We also have a Copilot strategy workshop, which is around activating Copilot across your organization. So we're identifying use cases where Copilot would be effective, and then developing a adoption strategy, and finally the train and adopt, where we help roll out Copilot and get that return on investment. Our Copilot security assessment workshop is 1995. Our Copilot strategy workshop, where we help kind of define that rollout for Copilot, is also 1995. And then we have our training and adoption, which is where we select 2 to 30 users in your organization, and we work with those over a period of 3 months to roll out Copilot across your organization and make sure that it's adopted. Whilst we're working with those pilot users, we're identifying further use cases. And at the end of that 3-month process, we create a workshop report that covers off how you could roll out Copilot across the rest of your organization, and then increase the adoption and make sure you're getting your money's worth for Copilot. So that's a kind of whistle-stop tour as an introduction to Microsoft AI. If anyone has any questions, drop them into the chat and I'll be happy to answer those. And thank you very much for attending today.